Welcome everyone to the nightly Q&A for the 2021 Blood in the Snow Film Festival presented by Superchannel. I'm your host, Rob Bellamy, host of Bits Radio, and I'm here with Kelly Michael Stewart, Festival Director. You can hear this show and many others at www.bitsradio.ca. But for this festival, we are Bits TV, and tonight I would like to introduce the people from a couple incredible short films. If we could start with you, Patrick.
Would you like to introduce my film? Like, you want me to tell a little bit about it?
You and your film.
Yeah. So I'm nobody of importance, but my film is Coherence, and it's 26 minutes, and it's kind of a hybrid. It's kind of a music video, but also a short film, a musical. I don't know exactly how to describe it, which is, I guess, an issue. But yeah, it's to be experienced, and it kind of involves a world where, due to a mass psychedelic episode, the rules of reality and the power of observation have been shifted such that music itself becomes a sort of a magical component of it. And so in terms of horror genre, which is, I think, where this festival is definitely more geared towards, the horror, I imagine, is derived from the very nature that sometimes our darkest impulses and the things that we're not supposed to think about are often the most horrific. And if you knew that those things could manifest or alter the state around you, it would be very hard to resist that urge, which is, I guess, where the horrific parts come in.
That is awesome. And Carlos.
Hi, my name is Carlos Soriano. I'm a filmmaker, born and raised in Dominican Republic, but based in Montreal since 2013. And I made a web series called The Revenge of the Snowflakes. If you know, the reference of snowflakes is what they call people who get offended, supposedly, on social media, and is these people taking revenge on the people who abuse them online. So it tells the story about a young woman who is a community service activist person, and who receives intimidation online and starts hunting down the abusers.
That's awesome. That is so fitting for today.
Yeah, there's a lot of buzzword content in it.
Well, this is what I love about this program, is that this is probably one of our most eclectic programs that we play during the festival. And what I love about the digital program is that, you know, we can experiment a little bit because like that, and show different kinds of things that maybe wouldn't have fit in our regular shorts programs. And I think both of your films are a really great example of taking some stuff and having its own narrative, but also kind of branching off in different areas that isn't as traditional as well.
Yeah, Patrick, what made you decide to put videos together to build a story?
It was, a lot of it wasn't intentional. It was that I had a producer friend of mine was working with a singer-songwriter, and I heard her voice, but she was doing folk music. And I always had this sort of inkling to dabble in music and music production a little bit, even though I was more in film. And I just, on a whim, decided to experiment and do some demo tracks with her. And it sounded the cinematic sound started to come out. And I decided originally to do one music video, but then it just seemed like, okay, if I'm playing in this sandbox of sci-fi, horror, fantasy, let's do a couple of videos. And then it became, well, we have 6 songs on the EP. Why don't we do a concept album? Then the concept album sort of over time evolved. And I guess as it unfolded, I got this desire to try and merge film with music in a way that wasn't arbitrary. I felt it's been done before, but it was almost a marketing gimmick. It's been done before, but it was very much, the music itself didn't have a place in the fiction of the world that was grounded in science. And I wanted to have it so that if there was music in this world, there was a reason for music to be central, rather than just sort of a breaking of the third wall and there is music here, but it's this other thing, which is, I guess, a little bit of an obscure way to represent it, but it evolved over time. And I think it took me about 8 to 10 years from filming the first video, working on the music, to finishing the post-production, which kind of took on a life of its own. So every step of the way, it gave me a lot of time to really nail down all the perfect sort of machinations and the nuts and bolts of how this world worked. And so even like 2018, me and my co-partner with the band, Sarah, we had a chance to be at Fan Expo, and we had a booth, and it was just a terrific opportunity to shop the idea around, to see what's out there, see if we're treading on a worn path here, if we're being unoriginal without knowing it, and just kind of to expose yourself to a bit of ridicule. And we were surprised that it seemed like we were doing something a little bit novel, which I think, like Kelly was saying, it's a good and a bad thing. It's novel, so you're kind of in uncharted territory, but then where does it go? How do you show this to people?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, that is excellent. I know in Hollywood, they always say you need to be able to reference what your film is like.
Yeah.
And I personally like the ones that experiment like yours.
Yeah. Thank you.
You know, and Carlos, then what brought around your desire to tell this story?
The screenwriter is a young woman of color called Audrey Belin, and we were studying together and decided to work together for our final project, and that we knew that we wanted to tackle touchy and kind of provocative subjects and do it in comedic timing, and then with a touch of crazy, and do it at kitsch and campy. And the idea came at one of our sessions. We started thinking of bringing the fantasy of the social media interaction and chain of abuse to real life, and like bringing it to the last consequences, and started to get bloody, and we knew that we wanted to, splashes of blood, and we were happy to have incredible people working with us, and we were able to put together some very how do you say it in English? Crazy, funny, and bloody fun. And because there's a sexual part of it, because the couple that are perpetrating this vengeance are finding themselves attracted to each other the more that we fall into this violence. It's kind of natural born killers in social media.
Social media, Ricky and Mallory. I love it. Well, the one thing I wanted to find out, because we watched the first episode, and there's a location in there where, I guess we can talk a little bit because people have just watched it, where someone relieves themselves. So how did you go about getting a location that you said, well, this is what we're going to do?
You know the answer to this already. Go ahead.
It's all very meta-referential. We were that's part of an exercise that we did at the beginning of the program when we started working together. And but this house that we found is some people might notice, but there are two little figurines right next to the door on both sides of the door, which represent wisdom. So I saw the house and I said, like, it would be crazy if this person posed as a cultured and well-being, well-mannered person in real life, but then is an abuser online. So it was perfect. And then the house actually belongs to this sweet old lady, and I knew that I wanted it to be like suburbia, and that place gave all of it, because the dynamic that we're placing is that a little bit of a generational confrontation, like a generational fight, and also like city versus periphery or the countryside. I feel like there was. I felt like as an immigrant, I feel like there's a divide between what you find in the city, in Montreal, for instance, and then what you will find, how people would, perceive you when you move outside of the city. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to bring that to the. I'm talking because we're talking ultimately about racism or not even that, but friction, racial friction between people, immigrants and not, and being that the protagonist is a woman of color, and I wanted to actually really represent the divide between the two people.
No, that is excellent. Patrick, I did want to come back to yours because when I started watching yours, it blew me away with the effects that are in it. Did you always have that in mind, that it would be so effects heavy in those first certain videos?
No, I think that was part of the evolution of it. In early on, I knew basically the genre that it needed to fall into, and I told the story in a very similar manner. But as I started finishing off filming the latter videos, it started to become clear that the idea began to lean more heavily into the psychedelic world. And it was almost as though the films that I had shot first, I shot without the knowledge of that. So I had to start finding a way to make it all feel like what the idea was currently, rather than what the idea was 2 or 3 years ago when I started to chip away at these videos. And so it just, in order to glue it all together, it all started kind of getting heavily treated at the same time, which I felt also was it scratched an insatiable itch in myself, because when I was a youngster, I always enjoyed painting more than filmmaking, more than music, more than anything. And so it felt like going back to something for me, to be able to almost repaint everything and reestablish, recompose every shot. So everything is basically filmed, everything's practical, but then it's just heightened and stripped down and repackaged again.
No, it almost looked like it was motion captured in places like that, but was that, or was it just that? Is that just the visual style that you put onto the film that you shot?
It's primarily the visual style. Like, everything there is the motion capture that does exist is mainly from like a tracking perspective of retracking and restabilizing backgrounds to make them seem fake. It's kind of a strange thing to. I'm a big fan of filming practically. I always go to the nth degree to try and do practical effects, but then you go and you try and make it look fake at the end, which is kind of seems silly, but in some way, there's also an expectation I find in modern audiences that things have to look a certain way too. So you're also always fighting that urge to make things look really polished. When I'm a big fan of campy. I mean, the Creature from the Black Lagoon to me is just the most incredible thing ever to grace the silver screen, and yet if you showed it to people today, they'd laugh at it. So
look at Rob's shirt. I don't know if you noticed there.
Oh, no way!
There he is.
That's what you're talking. It's subliminal.
Yeah,
it's operating on you.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
There you go.
And now I pull out the DVD.
No, you're right. That is one of my favorite films of all time too. But in today's market, no, it's almost laughed at, like you said. So I can appreciate that 100%.
I definitely that feeling resonates in me, because when I was putting this together, I was thinking, I don't want to light this up like any other show that people are watching on their iPads. I wanted to, and I mixed colors and I brought in like saturation, and I made it look fake in real life, which is kind of the inverse method. But yeah, I wanted it to be. I wanted to break a little of the expectation of like what is polished, what I'm consuming, what it's. I sense that I don't like black backgrounds. I don't like blank backgrounds. I mean, I think that every space should be filled with the detail. I think that you can bring as much information as you can at all times, and you should never repeat yourself. And it's, it was great to be able to work with a photographer that was like, oh yeah, I know what you mean, and make this atmosphere that is heavy but also very beautiful, because I'm kind of like that, glam but horrific.
So was it always your intention then, Carlos, to make it a comedic horror, for lack of a better word, at the end?
Yeah, well, I think that it derives from the relationship that I have with my team, and the time we spent together. We were having a lot of fun and laughing while we were studying and working together. So yeah, we were definitely. I I mean, the screenwriter and I was like, we know this, and then she started working and it came out exactly like I wanted it.
Now, Patrick, this question I put down to ask, but after hearing some of your answer earlier, I don't think so. I wondered if you had any other multi-video ideas floating around, but you said this one took almost 10 years.
A lot of that is because of my OCD. It's, but you do learn a lot in the process of taking on something. And so I feel like, unfortunately, the answer is yes. I have 4 more videos that I'm in pre-production right now. And the only thing is now I'm bringing in extra help. I'm trying not to be quite such a control freak on everything, which I feel like I don't regret being a control freak for the first little initial launch, because now we have a defined set of aesthetics that people can look to as a reference. And I think now it's just a matter of scaling up and doing it a lot faster, having a turnaround that's months, not years, that sort of thing. And I even did sort of as a bridge and almost as a Bible for like people that I bring on board, I did basically like a little mini graphic book that's a reference of the world and it has the lore and everything. And this will sort of be something that I can, as people come on board, I can say, okay, read this and you'll understand. It's only like 26 pages. Read it. You'll understand the world. I won't have to, walk you through it like Morpheus.
Sorry, is this for the film that we're playing, or this a new
so
project?
The film that you're playing is called Coherence, which is kind of like an origin story of the main heroine, and then this guy is Incoherence. So
Okay.
is essentially a short little document, a graphic document that describes how the world broke. Why are you seeing the things that you're seeing in Coherence? Why are all these things happening? This thing, it's also free to download on the website too, a band called desire.com. So it just kind of gives a quick little blurb. You flip through it and it's not very verbose, and it's, very similar aesthetics to the videos. So yeah, it just kind of puts you up to speed in an enjoyable manner, I hope.
That's very cool.
I like that that this is not a conventional production model that you have executed for your film.
Oh, definitely.
Even the distribution and promotional material is like a exhibition catalog, if you will. And I like that. And I was thinking that I wanted to say in this interview that I want to thank Netflix for allowing us to do this film and sponsoring the program that we finished at Innis. And that it was amazing that it's targeted to like people of color, immigrants, etc. And that it was a great first step towards like a bringing more people to behind the camera in the Quebecer and Canadian industry. But also there's a lot of work to do in what is building making a production model that is not exactly as we're gonna shoot the script as is, and it's gonna finish at the end the way that it was intended. It can also be a project that it could grow, that it doesn't have to hire the already known or established professionals, that it could bring other people who are not from film, and that kind of possibility is also part of what me as an immigrant, for instance, who's working with people who are not in the industry, have been able to like take advantage of, and it's important that it's also a part of what we're building in these new programs, etc.
Well, that's a big part of the appeal of one of the many reasons why we wanted to play your film, Carlos, is that it just felt like it was telling things from a different point of view and showing having BIPOC people in front of the camera and behind and like that, and just by that alone is just going to give a different point of view than just what the traditional narratives that we're always getting, kind of thing like that. And just by that alone, because the one thing that it's always a little frustrating as programmers is that we tend to get the same things over and over again. We get like hundreds of submissions, but you end up getting like, well, we've already had that, and then so it's really important for us as a festival and as a society to in Canada, we're a very multicultural country, and we want to show so many different kinds of voices and points of view and stuff like that. And so I think I think that's really important. Yeah.
No, definitely.
Well, And that brings around, because sometimes I always ask about casting, but Patrick, it sounds like you were in charge of the music for you. So the singer, are they part of the band, or was this someone you brought in to tell this story?
The singer, Sarah, she's basically a collaborator with me in the broadest sense of that. So when I pitched to her an idea of merging my film background with her music, we both started melding into each other's worlds, whereby I co-wrote many of the songs with her, did all the production on it, but she would produce with me. I gave her a crash course of just basic production, but I said also, I'm not going to tell you too many things of what to do. I'll just tell you what I need. And a lot of times her just being resourceful and not knowing how it's typically done allowed us to do a lot of things that we wouldn't have been able to do had we done it traditionally. What Carlos was saying, a lot of times there's value in having people that are very green but eager. And so Sarah was somebody that it was her voice that I wanted to work with. I really enjoyed her voice. And she put faith in the general idea, and we just stuck it through and kept going. So it's essentially there's no a band called Desire. It's initially we liked the sound of the name from a streetcar named Desire. We kind of drew it from there, and then it turned into a band called Desire, so it would be ABCD. And then after that, I wanted it to have a legitimate place in the world where the name of these people, of these musicians, if musicians were outlaws in this world, would there be a reasonable excuse to call it a band called Desire, or have that title somehow slot into the world without it being this meta thing that's referential only to people watching it? And so it kind of became, well, if this whole world is driven by psychedelic sort of impulses and consciousness, well, then desires would feed your manifestations. And then the outlaw groups in the world are called bands. So it ended up being it doesn't seem forced in the context of the world, which I liked.
Excellent. And that's all in that backstory graphic novel.
Yeah.
Which you can get. We'll throw that up there, bandcalleddesire.com. I'm going to download that because I desperately want to read that.
Yeah. I can send you guys a copy too. I did the graphic book originally, and then Sarah calls me and she's like, "Oh, we have one super fan that's really diehard, that's been so patient waiting for years and years for us to output stuff. His name is Josh. He lives in the States." And she calls me and she's like, "Somebody ordered our graphic novel." And a part of me was like, "That's terrific." The other part of me was like, "Oh crap, now we have to order 1,000 graphic novels." So I have plenty if you guys would like to get a hard copy.
Okay. Oh, definitely. Yes, I will get a hold of you because I'm a very physical media person.
Yeah, there's no replacement. Like scrolling, it's fun. It gets it in people's hands, but having it has value.
Does the media affect how you made this? Because obviously most music videos are viewed on tablets, on phones, Did that affect how you created this? Like now it's going to be on the big screen.
I try not to listen to too many of the current trends of technology, because oftentimes if something, for instance, takes you 5 or 6 or 7 years to make, by the time you're releasing it, everything could be completely different anyway. So I try and do things that are as timeless as possible, both in terms of like thematic elements, but also just technically. And to me, the kind of 2.39 CinemaScope aspect ratio, even though it's counter to all of the laws of this new trend of the TikTok, videos being vertically oriented, it just feels right. And so I'm a believer that you don't always have to make art for what's going to sell and what's going to be really amazing. You just make it because it's cohesive and it makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. Carlos, let me ask you real quick if that was the same for you. Did you gear towards media? Like most things are viewed on phones and tablets. Did you gear your project towards that, or were you just open to anything?
I
think we lost him.
Okay. Well, on that note, we're actually out of time, actually, so we should probably just use that to wrap up, and we'll call it a thing, and we can do the rest of it on Bits Radio.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot, everyone.
There. Okay. That gives them the break to edit, but we can continue chatting for a second if Carlos is there.
Yeah, it looks like it's froze up on him here.
Yeah, I think he's really frozen.
Mhm.
Okay.
I was secretly hoping he was really thinking. Like, if give the most
It would be funny. Yeah. Okay.
This answer is going to blow us away. Okay.
Okay. So I think
Well,
we can wrap it up then.
Patrick, he's gone.
Yeah.
If you ever want to chat more on Bits Radio, let us know, because we'd love to have you back on, and we can.
I'd love to. Yeah. Even my collaborator just happened to have something today, but she was really jealous of me being able to chat with you guys, because it's funny, you make these things in a bubble, but then you release them. You just want to share it with people that you know. Even the mere fact that you guys have seen it is pretty amazing, right? Like, at this point, it's like, okay, family, friends, cast and crew have seen it, but to meet other people that with fresh eyes have seen it.